Hey everybody, it's Carm here. I'm coming to you on a late Thursday morning. Gorgeous day out here, probably low 70s. It's supposed to be pretty warm all week, or at least for the rest of the week, and this is really enjoyable so far. And, yeah, I want to come out and share 3 more with you. So yeah, let's start right in with October Variations from Volker Kriegel and Mild Maniac Orchestra from 1977. Great stuff here. I'd gotten this from Record Wonderland. I'm sure Chris was involved at the time, pointing this out to me. But, I've enjoyed Volker's stuff for quite some time. The guitar player. I heard him on Mood Records, quite some years ago in the United Jazz and Rock Ensemble. And there's this band there at the time. You've got Volker on electric and acoustic guitars and sitar guitar, or like an electric sitar. Thomas Betterman keyboards, Hans-Peter Strauer bass guitar, bass synth, and Everett Fraterman on drums. Some notable guests here on some of the cuts. Mostly one of them, including Wolfgang Donner himself, guesting on here, which was my introduction, to Mood Records way back when. This one's on MPS though, which is a wonderful label, which only have a few things on, but just beautiful stuff here. The first piece is, stands out a little bit from the rest for the most part. Very much like the title, very funky and groove oriented. Wonderful energy though, very much of its time. Although much of the rest of the album is actually pretty subdued. Maybe alluding to the mild in the title, but it's very kind of wispy and reflective and not melancholy, but it does kind of remind you of more of like a kind of a quiet gray day where you're just kind of given more to contemplation, which isn't to say that it isn't active also. It's more subtle, but it's not quite as in your face as some is a stereotype of some fusion of the time, is apt to be, with a lot of kind of showing off on one's instrument, but it's much more subdued here. A wonderful keyboard work too, especially on these pieces. Lots of the kind of transparent, sounds like ARP Odyssey string synthesizer, which I just love. It was kind of weaved in there, and Ballad Garden and Palm Dreams, and October Variation has Wolfgang Donner soloing, which almost sounds like a guitar synthesizer, somewhere between Pat Metheny's and John Abercrombie's, if you know their sounds. But then you can kind of tell it's maybe it's like a mini Moog, or I'm not quite sure, but very memorable. And the first piece on the second side is a little more upbeat, like the first piece in the first, but great energy there. The interplay is very subtle, between them. But again, it's not like the stereotype of fusion at the time, which was so, this kind of mad dashing between solos sort of thing. This is much more, the variations are much subtler, and you have to really listen to detect them. And Adora is a piece I'd known I'd heard this before, other versions. Volker Kriegel. This last piece in particular is really good. This one has a lot of interesting changes, chord changes, kind of stopping on a dime, going between different moods and feels, but very very high energy. But again, without being bombastic or overdoing it. Just a really good example of I call it more electric jazz of the time. And I have another one that combines this group and another a group he had earlier, which actually had Eberhard Weber and Rainier Bruninghaus. But of course, as I'm revisiting these things, I'm naturally, if there's a core artist on the album, I naturally want to hear other things I have by them and just explore them further that I hadn't, in all those years. So this is very recommended. October Variations. Just a really nice group here. from 1977, Mild Maniac Orchestra. Next up here, returning to a Japo, another Japo here. Kind of going through them little by little as I'm coming across them in the collection here. A really nice duo album here, System Tandem, by Jerry Stiven on various woodwinds and Rudolf Dasik on guitar. Previous to getting this album way back when, I wasn't familiar with either one of them. Just unbelievable players. Jerry Stiven, you could see going between each of these instruments. A lot of times when you have a sax, somebody who doubles on saxophone and flute or clarinet, a lot of times you can kind of tell what their primary instrument is and what their secondary instrument may be, just depending on how, just on maybe how proficient they sound or what's more dominant. You really can't tell with him. I find he's equally really amazing on all the instruments. And Rudolf on guitar plays electric guitar throughout, and it's not really like a clean jazz guitar tone, and it's not a distorted rock tone. It sounds like it's just plugged straight into the amp. Kind of a very raw approach. As often as not is playing chords, kind of chording along, or even playing single notes, but doing it more of an accompanying fashion. Maybe taking the occasional solo, but as you might expect between a guitar and woodwinds. But Jerry's playing is especially is really something else. Starting off with alto on the first piece. I really like these titles too. Puddle in the Muddle. Hey man, let's play something about Spain. What's your story? But he really he has a certain kind of syncopated groove feel. Able to play very melodically and very rhythmically, simultaneously. You can just kind of hear there's a certain internal rhythm that he seems to be following, as he's going along. It's really distinctive. The second piece is more subdued between flute and guitar. Now his playing on here, his flute playing is really, he does some kind of technique where I swear it sounds like he's yodeling, scatting, playing the flute, and even doing kind of an operatic thing with his voice, but doing it all at once, like multiphonically. And it gets to the point where it's almost silly. And then just before it gets too far into that, they come right back together real tightly into the piece, and it's just amazing. Very tight and loose at the same time. And Shepard's song, goes into something more quiet and a little more subdued. I think he's back on flute, or no, he's on soprano sax on that one, but also plays with a real, a kind of a quiet intensity. And the rest of the album is mostly concentrating on flute. The final piece, Puzzle Game, he's playing recorder in a way that I've never heard played before. If you could imagine the recorder being played in a funky, and again, very rhythmic and syncopated way, he really does it on here. It almost sounds like a pre-bebop jazz, like almost harking back to what you might have heard with Django Reinhardt or something, the kind of music they were making, but in a modern sense. But it's very, very, very much recommend. I think this is up on YouTube. But, definitely want to sample this. But, that's the thing with duos. A lot of times is you could really kind of tell the contrasting personalities and approaches, but how they make it work. Rudolph is the kind of like the straight person, very subdued, and Jerry is kind of really in some ways all over the place, but still it works so well between them. And it's another another Japo that's very distinctive and adventurous. And, definitely check it out. I think my music stopped here. I had I'm not sure what happened, but I had it playing off the phone, which I don't do very often. But finally here, Quiet Fire by Ancient Future, a group I've been into for quite a long time. Another lovely evocative cover. This is on Narada. It's on the Lotus branch of the label, which is more their acoustic. They also have the Equinox, which is more of like a mixture of electric and acoustic, maybe more fusiony, and the Mystique branch, which was electronic keyboard synthesizer based. But on here it's primarily acoustic, and just a very beautiful and evocative blend. You could hear a lot of South American influence, like Incan music or Peruvian, but also Far Eastern and Middle Eastern by the instrumentation. You've got Matthew Montfort playing various guitars and charango, which is, I guess, more used in South American music. Randy Mead on various flutes, including the banzuri, which is from Far East. Marcia Sloan on cello, who plays quite a bit throughout. You also have Alex DeGrassi on guitars, guesting, and Daryl Anger on violin, who they're from, normally from Windham Hill at the time. So you really have like a blend of that, somewhat of a folkish chamber music, even classical at times, Western classical, blended with South American and East Indian, but really only notionally making reference to one in particular. Sometimes one style predominates more than another, but it's just such a beautiful blend, and it really paints very evocative pictures. Wonderful traveling music. You could just imagine just going a lot of places, whether it's around the world or just any place with a lot of space and silence. You imagine just kind of an open field of whatever kind of setting you're thinking of, and the titles are very much it evokes the pieces very, very well. Cascade especially has this kind of undulating rolling feel to it. Just the way the instrumentation is blended. A little bit of electronics on there too, as well as guitars and flutes. But absolutely gorgeous album. I recommend anything by them. If you see Ancient Future, I think their early stuff is from, I think it goes back to the maybe late 70s, early 80s. If you like Doa, a group like that, or Oregon, I'd very much recommend it. Just beautiful stuff. And I actually have two other LPs of theirs lined up too to revisit. And you never know where it's going to lead you next. So Quiet Fire by Ancient Future. If you want to hear something, a nice blend of different styles from around the world, done seamlessly. So that'll do it for about now. As always, exploring things old and a few new things here and there, which maybe come on with those at some point, or just weave them in here. I'd done a book video recently, and I don't remember if I showed this. I want to share this real quick. James Griffiths had mentioned this in the comments. We were going back and forth, and I was in a shop just last weekend, not looking for this in particular, but it was there. Modern Music, A Concise History from Debussy to Boulez by Paul Griffiths, which, as far as James knows, I don't think he's not related directly, but looking forward to getting into this. See, it was only $4, so I wasn't looking for it, but I guess it was meant to be. And thank you again, James, for mentioning this. I guess he's mentioned he's been, I think he just started on it, so we'll have to compare notes at some time. So I'll share that real quick. So hope you're all well, and it's as lovely of a day wherever you're at, and continues, and to the next one. Peace, love, and joy.